Good morning. Just a brief introduction to MATLAB for those who are not familiar or forgotten some of the basic ways of learning more about MATLAB on your own. So I'll simply introduce the graphical user interface and how you interact with MATLAB, do some simple commands, and then how to learn more about various features from the demos and built-in help session. So when you start MATLAB, this is the window, the layout that you will see. Okay, so on the left side here, you will see the current folder, and you can change that in a typical window explorer environment to any directory that you want. So in this present case, I have set it to be in lecture 2, for example. There it shows me all the files in that current folder. Now, that is the current folder, and you also see that displayed in here. You can change it from there as well. That also becomes the current path, meaning if you enter any MATLAB commands, it'll first check that directory to see whether it can find that function. And if not, then it has a standard search procedure. For example, if I type path, it'll tell me that it'll search through all these folders to find that particular command that you have entered. So it's really a huge program, as you can see. Okay, so the variable is called MATLAB path, and more advanced users can build their own toolboxes and add that to the path to make it automatically search through their own custom built toolboxes. But the typical fashion that you would use is to have a current working directory where you keep all your M files and access them. So here, for example, I have an M file called trid.m. Okay, so if I say type trid tridiagonal.m, it goes and finds that particular file and displays the contents of that file. So this is a small function that I wrote to construct tridiagonal matrices. And you might find this useful in doing your current assignment, for example. So that is about the current folder and its purpose. Now the next one is the window called the command window. This is the main window through which you will interact with MATLAB, meaning when you enter a command, it interprets it, executes it, and prints out the result if it produces any result. For example, here I have the function trid. If I want to execute it, I can say trid parenthesis, and I have 4 parameters in there. Those are the lower, diagonal, upper, and the size of the matrix. For example, I want to specify as -2, 4, -1, I should have a comma, -4, 1, 5. So what I'm saying is execute that function using these values as inputs. Of course, the meaning of them will be defined by that particular function. A function is basically a rule for execution. Here I'm saying put on the lower diagonal -2, on the diagonal 4, and on the upper diagonal +1, and build me a matrix of size 5 by 5. So there it is. And you should try to understand what this particular function does. How does it produce this? So I can produce matrices of any size from this, having the same structure. Okay, so this is how you would interact with MATLAB. And some of the simplest interactions would be assignment statements. You can simply assign a matrix as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, for example, a 3 by 3 matrix. Okay, whenever you assign a variable, that will appear in the workspace window that you see here. Okay, so A is now an array, and it is a 3 by 3 array. And if you double click on that A, it will actually open up something called a variable editor, an array editor. So if I want to redefine A to be a 4 by 4 matrix with 20 in that position, I can just visually enter that. Now A dynamically becomes a 4 by 4 matrix. And if I go to this command window, I can type A and it will have this redefined value. So you can visually input the numbers if you want. Okay, so I can make that number as 5, or I can change that number to 15, Okay, so it's really convenient to edit large arrays. You can of course close these windows once you're done with them. Okay? But the main point is that whenever you are creating a variable in the command window, it appears in the workspace. The concept of workspace is basically a space where you keep all these variables. And variables are just labels which contains information. It could be numbers, it could be matrices, it could be strings. For example, I could have a variable called name, and I could put in there my name, for example. Okay, so now name is a variable that appears in the workspace, and it is a variable of the character type. So it contains characters. It doesn't have numbers, but it has characters. Okay, so again, you can go and edit that particular variable to anything that you want in the array editor or the variable editor window. So as you create more and more variables, they will be kept track of, and there will be only one current definition. For example, if I go and say a is equal to 3 or 4, now a becomes a scalar. So the previous instance of a is completely removed from the workspace. So you may accidentally reuse and erase some of the variables. These are some of the common errors that one could introduce. Okay, so at any one time, a symbol can have only one value, but I could create a is equal to 2, 4, 6, 8, for example. So this a is different from this a, meaning variables are case sensitive. Okay, and arrays can be addressed by putting a parenthesis. For example, a 2, 1 would give me the second row in the first column. In this case, it should it should give me an error message because a is only a scalar. Okay, but I actually meant to say a, so it gives me number 6, which is the second row and the first column. So there are lots of very powerful features in creating arrays and in addressing arrays and changing values of arrays. For example, I could do this 1, 2 is equal to 46, for example. So I'm changing that element in the first row, second column to 46. Of course, you already know another way of doing it, which is the array editor, opening the array editor and changing the value as well. Okay, so there are often many different ways of doing the same thing in MATLAB, and you'll get used to it as you go along. Now, there are help sessions. One of the things that you need to know is type the help command on any topic that you want. For example, LU decomposition is something that you need to do in the first assignment. So if I type help LU, it'll search for the command and give me what the command does, LU factorization. So it takes as input a matrix A and then produces the two factors, the lower and upper triangular matrix, and returns them. So a function is something that has a name and an argument list, input argument list, and it produces an output argument. Now, when you're using this, you don't have to specify explicitly what the output argument lists are. For example, I can say LUA. Okay. So it produces only by default the first argument, which is the lower triangular matrix. I guess I'm not getting this right, because it's supposed to give me a lower triangular matrix. So maybe I had something wrong with my A. So let's check whether the determinant of A is well defined. So I do L comma U equals LU A. So this is the lower triangular matrix, and that is the upper triangular matrix. Now if I take the product of L times U, I should get back A. Okay, and A is the same thing, as you can see. Okay, now it doesn't look like it's lower triangular because it is often uses something called pivoting to avoid division by 0, and so it permutes, it switches the orders of the rows in a matrix, and that switching is kept track of in the third parameter that it returns. This is called the permutation matrix, for example, P. Okay, so it's actually P times A is equal to L times U. P is going to be just a matrix containing ones and zeros, and it simply tells you which rows and columns have been switched around. And there are more sophisticated versions of this. As you go through, read these, you will find what are the other powerful features of this LU factorization code. And it can take any size matrix and return the factorization for you. So one of the key things is to use the help command and ask help on any particular topic that you want. Of course, there is also a help on function browser, for example. So that will give you a huge list of all the functions that are available in MATLAB, built-in functions. So if you know that you're looking for functions in linear algebra, you can just select that, matrix analysis, so row-reduced echelon form, which is in the class, the norm, the determinant, the condition number. And for linear equations, you have LU decomposition, LU matrix factorization, okay, and then the inverse of a matrix. So this is how you can learn. Of course, you need to know what you're looking for when solving a particular problem, and then you can find out whether that is particularly available in MATLAB through these built-in help features. And the help features are normally reasonably good as long as you know what you are doing. Okay, and then product help, you can now search for, I think the help window went below that. Okay, oops. Yeah, you can search for any aspect of MATLAB that you want. Okay, I want to, for example, understand about fast Fourier transforms, so I type FFT. Okay, so it gives you FFT, FFT2, FFT shift. So there are so many different functions. Now if you select that, then it gives you more specific information about the FFT functions. Okay, and